Hello dear learners, welcome to BIREN'S Academy. I am Mohan, your English guide for the preparation of Ssb Pgt English. This is going to be an orientation session. Ajiro ei session re ame keval matra it is going to be an orientation session in which we are going to learn the basics and the foundation of English language and literature. Before going on for the directly to the topic, we will have a discussion on the syllabus first. So as I told you that this is going to be an orientation session, so your rest of the classes or sessions will be on paid basis. If you like my video, then please do like and subscribe. Also comment there in the comment section. So let's have a quick discussion on the syllabus first, then we will move on to our topic and we'll discuss the foundations and introduction to the basics of English language and literature. Okay, so this is your syllabus for Ssb Pgt English, and in which total 5 number of units are there. In the first unit itself, it says the periods of English literature. Okay, like it begins with the Elizabethan and Jacobean drama, which means your syllabus begins with Elizabethan period. But we need to discuss even the historical backgrounds in order to understand the Elizabethan period. हमको जब Elizabethan period को बुझिया को अच्छी ताहले हमको तार previous history टाको मध्य जानिबा को पड़िबो. Okay, so we'll discuss that today. Other than the Elizabethan and Jacobean drama, we have with the metaphysical poetry, restoration drama, Augustan satire, rise, and the novel in the 18th century, romantic poetry, Victorian crisis and compromise, early and later Victorian novels, the modernist movement, modern poetry, modern drama, and stream of consciousness novels. Okay, so if you look at this unit particularly, it begins with the Elizabethan drama. It begins with the Elizabethan drama and goes up to post-modern period. Okay, from Elizabethan period to post-modern period. Okay, so it comprises of the entire history of English literature. Okay, so ए जिनस रे हमें केवल मात्र जहाँ prescribe अछि खाली सेते माने हमें पढ़िबा, that doesn't matter. We will discuss other than what has been prescribed there in the syllabus in order to be clear with the basics of all these things and in order to face any kind of questions that may come in the examination. Okay, coming to the next unit, the second unit, it asks about the forms of literature. Okay, different forms of literature, jemti rochi poetry ho, novel ho, etc. Okay, so we'll discuss different forms of literature here in which you can see here on the screen lyric, ballad, ode, sonnet, epic, elegy, verse libre, tragedy, comedy, romantic comedy, and so many other things are there in which like picaresque novel, types of novel, epistolary novel, gothic novel. Okay, then short story, travelogue, essay, autobiographical novel, etc., etc. Okay, so we are supposed to discuss so many things in this unit. Okay, in which the famous text that we are also going to discuss, like when it comes to ode. Okay, so there is a very famous ode which I personally like the most, Ode on a Grecianon by John Keats. Okay, Ode on a Grecianon. Okay, like epic. Okay, the Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser. So we are going to discuss each and every text in detail in order to be clear with the basics and in order to face any kind of questions that may come in the examination. Okay, same goes with any form of literature that has been prescribed there in the syllabus. So you can rest assured and join us to learn more in more vehemently and in detail. Then the next unit, the third unit, it says about the theories, okay, literary theories. Okay, in the third unit, we'll discuss about the literary theories in which it begins with the Plato's theory of mimesis, definition of tragedy by Aristotle. Okay, then the Marxian's approaches to literature, structuralism, new criticism, okay, theory of impersonality, okay, post-colonialism, everything, all the theories that has been prescribed there in the syllabus, we'll discuss in detail. Also, I can assure you that you will be ready with any to face any kind of questions that may come in the examination. Okay, next, the fourth unit. It is about the literary figures of speech that we see. Figures of speech or literary terms. Figure of speech or literary terms like allegory, anagoresis, aporia, catharsis, conceit, comic relief. Okay, that epiphany and all. Okay, and jota ki bahut common in English language and literature, which are very common. Objective correlative. Okay, in the syllabus for all the universities, objective correlative thibo. Okay, paradox thibo, pon thibo. Okay, so ei jinso sabu mane jota ki which is common in the syllabus. Okay, for all the universities, those things are also there, which we will discuss in the course of our sessions in future. Okay, other literary terms like personification, pathetic fallacy, poetic justice, realism, symbolism, okay, surrealism, three dramatic unities. Okay, ei sab jinso ko ame in the process of our sessions we'll discuss everything in detail. Okay, the last unit that says the candidate shall attempt an appreciation of a poem commenting on aspects of its form, content and style. Okay, we can say that this is nothing but justification of for the poem. Okay, writing a critical analysis for the poem or any topic that has been given there in the question. Okay, so after having short discussion on the syllabus, हमको यदि syllabus discussion करिबा त हमको बहुत time लगेबा, किंतु after having a short discussion on the syllabus, I can say that the syllabus is very vast, but the preparation and the process is going to be very like fun loving and all. Okay, we are going to enjoy in the course of our preparation. Okay, माने syllabus टा इस हिसाब रे design ही छी that you are going to enjoy while preparing. Okay, so this was the syllabus that we have to go through in order to crack the examination and in order to be success in our life. Okay, so anyway, a syllabus ko hame in detail discuss kariba if you join BIREN'S Academy. Today, as I told you, that we are going to have a discussion on this topic: foundations of English literature and language, an introductory overview. Okay, foundations, because if we are the students of English literature and language, but do we really know how English as a language came into existence? Okay, tara mane utpatti kouthi hichi. Okay, we simply know that English came from England, but how? Okay, it didn't come all of a sudden. Okay, so what is the process that English was proven to be a language? So I discuss also not only language, we'll also discuss the literature part of that how literature also began. Okay, anyway, let's begin with our topic. First of all, let's have a discussion on literature. We know what literature is. Whenever I ask my students, they would often say, what is literature? So they would say literature is a piece of writing, that's all. Okay, but what is literature? If you have gone through the books, you might have found so many other definitions, but here I have come up with two definitions. Okay, so what is the traditional definition? Literature refers to works of creative writing, especially those recognized as having enduring artistic merit, such as novels, poetry, drama, and short stories. Okay, so what is literature? It refers to the works of creative writing. Creative writing ko bujhauchi. And which type of creative writing? Anything that you write is a creative writing. But which type of creative writing can be said to be a part of literature? Which have enduring artistic merit. Artistic merit jaharo thibo. Okay, timelessness thibo, and so many other things are there. The characteristics are there that it should be following. Okay, so novels ho, poetry ho, drama ho, kimba short story ho, jaharo enduring artistic merit thibo taku ame a part of literature boli kari kahi pariba. Okay, not only these four only. Okay, other things are also there like essays and all. Jaku ame jaharo ke enduring artistic merit thibo taku ame literature gote part boli kahi pariba. Okay, the next one. What is the academic perspective for literature? Literature encompasses a body of written works that are studied for their form, content, style, and impact. This can include philosophical texts, essays, and even historical documents when analyzed for literary value. Okay, so we are students, and this is very important for us because we have to critically analyze any work of art in order to understand it and also to answer the questions in the examination, be it the academic examination or for any job. Okay, so this was a brief definition for literature. Okay, now ମୁଁ ଯେମିତି କହିଲି କି how literature or how English as a language come into existence. Okay, so in English history or history of English literature, we have all read in during our post graduation or masters. Okay, what is the chronology of English history? What is that? That it began with Anglo-Saxon. In almost all the history books, you may find these things: Anglo-Saxon period, then Anglo-Norman period. Okay, then age of Chaucer. Okay, in most of the universities we learn from these age of Chaucer. But यार पूर्वरु जहाँ अच्छी Anglo-Saxon period and Anglo-Norman period याको हमें skip करी देता हूँ. So in today's session we are going to discuss everything in detail up to age of Chaucer. Okay, of course not in detail, but what the things that are very necessary to know हमें सही सब जिनसा को discuss करीबा. Then the other things which would be very much necessary ताकू हमें when you join, then we will discuss everything in detail, because in today's short video we cannot discuss everything in detail. We need a lot of time to discuss all these things. Okay, so आजिरा session रे as much as possible आमे मु से ताकू justify करिया पई चेष्टा करिबे. Okay, let's have a discussion. Okay, so the first sub point we can say is Rome's invasion of Celtic lands. Okay, what is Celtic land? First आमे सेटा को जानिया को पड़िबो. Today's England. Okay, today's England, आमे जहाँ को England बोली कर जानू चाहिए आज. Okay, and we know that England invaded almost all other nations and colonized there, settled its colonies there in all other nations. But the land that colonized in all other nations, the land that invaded every other nations, was once invaded by many tribal communities. Okay, जो इंग्लैंड को हमें जानी कि सब प्रत्येक अन्य देश को जाई कि सेटरे निजर कॉलोनीज सेटल करी, that land was once colonized by, was once invaded by many other tribal communities. Okay, so the name England, how did it come? Okay, सी जिन सगटा को हमें मध्य डिस्कस करिबा. So then the name the land England was known to be Celtic lands, because the people living there, or the tribal people living there, used to be called as Celts. Okay, Celts. Okay, and from them in Ada Asila Celtic lands, and the language they used to speak was Celtic language. Okay, so they were invaded by Roman Empire many times, very often. Okay, and they brought with them their language Latin, and the Celtic language and Latin, it got mixed up, and a new language was formed there, which was being spoken by the people Celts there in the land. Okay, tapare what has happened in around 5th and 6th century, in between 5th and 6th century, what has happened? A new tribal community, Germanic tribes, we can say, 3 Germanic tribes, namely Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. These 3 Germanic tribes invaded the land. Rome itself was invaded by few Normans. Okay, a few tribes from the north side. Rome was itself invaded. So Rome kona kala taro jette sabu army thile in the Celtic land, it withdrew those army to save its own territories. Okay, when at that time the Celtic land was free from any kind of invasion. Okay, only the local people used to live there. Okay, taking the advantage of such things, these three Germanic tribes, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, they planned to invade the Celtic land. Okay, they came and invaded the land. Okay, so it is Niger colonies settle kole, and those inhabitants, those real inhabitants were pushed away towards westwards. Okay, westwards को समान को push करी दिया गला westwards को Wales. The names of the place are Wales, Cornwall, and southward जोटा कि हमरो Highlands of Scotland. Highlands in Scotland. Okay, so ये जो real inhabitants थे, they were pushed by these three Germanic tribes, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, towards westwards, named Wales and Cornwall, and southwards to Highlands and Scotland. Okay, then that land, okay, just that land started to be called as Anglo-Saxon land, after the name of the Germanic tribes who settled their colonies there in the land. Anglo-Saxon, say area goes Anglo-Saxon land boli kari kuha gala, and they settled their colonies for a period from 5th century to 1066. Okay, and this period is called as Anglo-Saxon period. Okay, this period was called as Anglo-Saxon period. Okay, now Anglo-Saxons, these three Germanic tribes, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, they brought with them their language, a different language now. Their language, their cultural celebrations, okay, their cultural celebration, and the most important thing is paganism. जोटा कि आकु आमर लिटरेचर रे बहुत important role play करिवो paganism. Okay, so these Angles, Saxons, and Jutes brought with them these three things: language, cultural celebrations, and paganism. Okay, so in these time written culture was not in use. Okay, so the literature, these be it Celts or Anglo-Saxons, okay, so they used to use the oral literature. Okay, writing habit was still not in use at that time, so we do not have many pieces of their work of arts, but still we have few which are very important, but the names of the authors are not known to us. Anyway, let's discuss what has happened thereafter. Okay, so in this time, if we look, then few आमे जदि लिटरेचर पार्ट को टिके आसीबा, so few authors are there, few authors in such Caedmon, Steinwolf. Okay, these are two very famous poets. Okay, then Bede, the most important person for the history of English literature, because he wrote, okay, Bede wrote a work of art called Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum. Okay, Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum. Bede लिखितले यांकु a work, and Bede is known as the first historian in England or in English language. Okay, so what is this work? Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum. याको यदि हम English रे translate करिबा, so it would be history ecclesiastical history of the English people. Ecclesiastical history of the English people. actually this is the work of art from which we get to know a lot of things about the past events that had happened. Okay, this is the work of art, this is the record from which we get to know a lot of things, a lot of events that had happened in the past. Okay, ecclesiastical history of the English people, एथरू ही हमें बहुत किसी जानिया को पाउछु. Okay, so Bede was the person. Next, another one was there, Alfred the Great, a prose writer. Okay, Alfred the Great, who actually, yeah, in the meantime, Saint Augustine, who brought Christianity to England again. Okay, Christianity to England, the Roman Christianity was again introduced by Saint Augustine in this land, in the Celtic land. Okay, and Alfred the Great was also a very important person in the for our English literature. Okay, so this was all about the Anglo-Saxon period. A lot of things were being happened there. Okay, so moving on to the next part. Okay, as I told you that we are going to have a brief discussion, not in detail, but a lot of other things are there that I have to skip today in order to not make the video much longer. Okay, so next one, Anglo-Saxon period. After having discussed Anglo-Saxon period, now we are going to discuss the Anglo-Norman period. Okay, the next one that we are going to discuss is Anglo-Norman period. After Anglo-Saxon period, Anglo-Norman period we are going to discuss. Sorry. Okay, Anglo-Norman period. Okay, so Anglo-Saxon to Anglo-Norman, how it happened now? So Normans. Okay, Norman come from the word Normans. So Northmen, they came from north side, so they were called as Normans. Northmen. Okay, so these Normans, they came to the land, Anglo-Saxon land, and they again started their colonies there. Okay, and as they were stronger than the previous 3 Germanic tribes, so they invaded the land and they started their rule, and they started ruling over the land. Okay, anyway, so देखो साइड बाय साइड माने हिस्टोरिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट तो रहुची किंतु ता सहित लैंग्वेज एंड लिटरेचर को मध्य बहुत सारा इफेक्ट पडुची को हिसाब रे when Normans came to the Celtic land, okay, before reaching the land, they spent so many years in France. Okay, they spent many years in France, and hence their language was influenced by the language of the land, French. Okay, so when Normans came to the Celtic land, they brought with them the French language. Okay, जो कि French influence बेसी ही वाला. Okay, so they brought with them the French language, and when they invaded the land and when they started ruling over the land, French language became the official language, the language of the court of the land. Okay, जोटा कि पूर्व थिला ओल्ड इंग्लिश, एंग्लो सेक्शन इंग्लिश को हमें ओल्ड इंग्लिश बोली करी कही था. Okay, old English बोली कही था. So आगरो जोटा after Saint Augustine's he translated, Saint Augustine translated, Saint Augustine propagated Christianity in England, also propagated English language, the spread of English language in the land. ताकू आमे ओल्ड इंग्लिश बोली कहूचे किंतु से समय जतले ओल्ड इंग्लिश टा कहा जाउतला सेतले जतले नॉर्मन्स माने ए लैंड को इन्वेड कले when and they brought with them the French language. Thereafter Old English became the language of the weak. Okay, Old English became the language of the weak, and French language became the language of the office, the language of the court, and the official language of the land. Okay, French language ro influence ta बढ़ी गला सेते बेले. Okay, and Old English को कही भी आउ माने कथावार्ता भी कही कलेने ना सेटा ऑफिस रे केबे ना कोर्ट रे केबे यूज हला. Okay, so French language continued to be in influence for so many years until layman's published Brut work of art brut in English. Okay, in English, but this English, layman's English in brut was not Old English. Okay, so it was a mixture of what? Latin, okay, Celtic language, okay, then also the French language. এই তিনটা মিশি করে তারপরে মানে যে ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজটা সে ক্রিয়েট করলে লেমন্স যে ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজটা সে মানে লিখিলে দিস ওয়াজ ইংলিশ বাট দ্য মিডিয়েবল ইংলিশ, not old English. Okay, the English was reformed now. Okay, so we can say that this is the revival of English language after the influence of French language for so many years in the on the land. Okay, so after Brut was published, Brut was known to the people, the scholars and the authors, they started writing in English again. Okay, so English re lekha lukhi puni bahut start hi gala tapre, and English language gradually became the language of the land then. Okay, okay, we skipped one thing, that Anglo-Norman was the period, but how did they come and how did they invaded the land? ताकू मध्य हमको जाने को पड़ेगा. Okay, so Normans came to the land in the year 1066. Okay, how? At that time, Harold was the king of the land. Okay, and Normans were led by William the Bastard. Okay, William the Bastard. Okay, in 1066 at Battle of Hastings, they defeated the king Harold, and then invaded the land in 1066, and from then William the Bastard was known as William the Conqueror. Okay, William the Conqueror. तांको William the Bastard को तापरे William the Conqueror बोली करी कुहागला. Okay, and that is how the Normans they settled their colonies in the Anglo-Saxon land, and the period and the land started to be called as Anglo-Norman period and Anglo-Norman land. Okay, so say to he from that angles and all, say to he hame England, and gradually it becomes it come to the name England. Okay, এই হিসাবে মানে ইংল্যান্ডের নামটা আসিলা, and as England the people of England were called as English, so the language was also called as English language. That is how English as a language come into existence. But we have so many other things to discuss that we will discuss. Okay, yeah, Norman conquest that we discussed just now. Now coming to the age of Chaucer, from 1066 the literature flourished until we can say 1400. Okay, age of Chaucer. After the Norman conquest in 1066, it continues, we can say, to 1400 until the death of Chaucer. Okay, the full name of Chaucer is Geoffrey Chaucer. Was born in somewhere in 1434 or 43, sorry, 1343. Okay, not sure, this was not sure, but died in 1400. Okay, so Chaucer is a very important figure in English literature. He is very important in order to learn English literature. We need to know a lot of things about Chaucer because his writings are very essential and very much important. Okay, and often questions are asked from Geoffrey Chaucer's period. Okay, although your syllabus begins with the Elizabethan period, but we must be clear with the concept of the age of Chaucer. Okay, so before the birth of Chaucer in 1343 or some in any year, okay, near about 1343, 100 years, the 100 years war had already begun in 1338. Okay, and Geoffrey Chaucer was a part of this 100 years war, okay, against France. They fought against France, and Geoffrey Chaucer also fought against France, in which he was caught by the French army. Okay, जो कि तांकू माने छोड़िबा पई a big amount of ransom money was to be paid by the king then. Okay, Edward the Third. Edward the Third was the king then. Edward the Third was the king, and Edward the Third had to pay big amount of ransom money in order to release Geoffrey Chaucer from the claws of the French army. Okay, so Geoffrey Chaucer, as I told you, is a very important figure. Kind of after Edward the Third released Geoffrey Chaucer from the claws of French army, से तांको विभिन्न प्रकार माने explore करिवा पे he sent him to different lands. Okay, विभिन्न land को for a political purpose or for other purposes as well, for the official purpose and all. He sent him to many other lands from which से बहुत किछि जिनस तापरे से सेठु सिखुचंती, and that is the reason why his works of art or why his writings are very much important today. Okay, sorry. Okay, so he was sent to so many different lands, and that's why his most important works like the Book of the Duchess, okay, and as we know Geoffrey Chaucer jete bele bi amar mind ko asibo amar mind ko gote kotha hi asibo, gote book hi asibo, kon seta the Canterbury Tales, which we know is to be incomplete. Okay, as he died, so he could not complete the work, the Canterbury Tales. Okay, anyway, आम ये सब जिनस को in detail discuss करिवा in the course of our discussion, but today we'll discuss everything in brief only. Okay, so Geoffrey Chaucer died in the year 1400, and after the death of Geoffrey Chaucer, okay, after the death of Geoffrey Chaucer, what had happened? There was no one else to take care about the literature thereafter. Okay, only the literary figures or whoever were the writers thereafter, they just copied the works of Geoffrey Chaucer. That's why that land, after the death of Geoffrey Chaucer in 1400, that land started to be called as barren land, barren period, sorry, barren period, as the writers, they just copied Geoffrey Chaucer. Okay, they didn't create anything new of their own. They just copied Geoffrey Chaucer. That's why this land started to be called as this period started to be called as barren period. Okay, then we know that a marvel came into existence. What was that? William Shakespeare. Okay, William Shakespeare. Okay, in the 16th century, जोटा क्योंकि आमे जस्ट जो सिलेबस टा डिस्कस करले, सिलेबस रे आमे देखले एलिजाबेथन ड्रामा. ओके, एलिजाबेथन ड्रामा टा माने केतेले स्टार्ट होची with the rising of Elizabeth the First to the English throne. Okay, Elizabeth the First जेतेले 1558 रे माने she becomes the Queen of England. From then the Elizabethan era begins. Okay, and here we are going to learn about the Elizabethan dramas as well by William Shakespeare and so many other playwrights also. जोटा आम in detail discuss करिबा. William Shakespeare, we all know the name William Shakespeare. जदि आम English literature student, so we must know about William Shakespeare. आउ जदि जने William Shakespeare को जानी नहीं ताहले I can say that he or she is not a good student in English literature or language. Okay, William Shakespeare, जेके तांकर most famous writings like Hamlet, okay, which is personally my favorite, just because of that monologue, to be or not to be. Okay, you must be knowing this one. You might be knowing this one. To be or not to be, that's the question, whether it's nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take an arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them. Okay, so jo monologues, just because of that, I personally like this monologue very much, and the entire drama also, Hamlet. Other than Hamlet, we are going to also discuss Othello. Macbeth, okay, and so many other things. Okay, eta to thila. We can say that the barren period ended, and again literature flourished in the era Elizabethan period. But before that, in 1557, another book of poem was published. Okay, another book of poem was published, which was Total's Miscellany. Okay, Total's Miscellany published itala, which was very famous, and which revived English literature again. Okay, so we can say आमे ए period को आमे usually कौन age of Renaissance बा Renaissance period बोली करी कही था. Okay, Renaissance period बोली की आमे कही था. Okay, so with Total's Miscellany was published in 1557, and Elizabethan period begins from 1558 until her death. Okay, so these are the things that we are going to discuss in our course of discussion, but few other things that we are also supposed to discuss. That is, what are the other things that we are supposed to discuss? And I have skipped so many things also. Okay, I have skipped so many things, like few things that we need to know. Thomas Yacht, okay, and Henry Hard. Who is the Earl of Surrey? Earl of Surrey. Okay, so आमे जो Renaissance period कथा कहूचे, English literature Renaissance period कथा कहूचे, which began from Italy. Okay, which began in Italy. Renaissance actually began in Italy, and Sir Thomas Yacht and Henry Hard, who is the Earl of Surrey. This question was once asked in the NET examination, also in the OPSC PGT examination, that what is the name of the Earl of Surrey who brought sonnets to England? Okay, and as ame tanku Earl of Surrey boli hi dakutile, so most of the students, they didn't know the name Henry Hard. So the name is Henry Hard. Okay, so Sir Thomas Yacht, जे कि इटली रु कौन नहीं कि आसले आम पई ब्लैंक वर्स, जोटा कि आमे आज सिलेबस रे मध्य डिस्कस करले. ओके, सो ही ब्रॉट विथ हिम ब्लैंक वर्स टू इंग्लैंड. ओके, से ब्लैंक वर्स आनी कि आसले. एंड व्हाट डिड हेनरी हार्ड द अर्ल ऑफ सरे इंट्रोड्यूस्ड? सोनेट, जोति पई कि शेक्सपियर बहुत फेमस मध्य हे गले. Okay, so these two things became very famous in English literature also, which came from Italy. Okay, जोटा कि आमे Renaissance period begin होची बोली करी आमे कहूची. Okay, so these are the things that we are supposed to discuss. आमु जेमति कहितली कि आजिरो ए short session रे आमे we are going to discuss everything, the entire period up to Elizabethan age in brief. So these are the things, few more things that I forgot to mention in my session today. That is John Wycliffe's Bible. Okay, John Wycliffe. See, few names are there which are going to be very important. Jemti kote Saint Augustine, who brought Christianity to England from Rome. Okay, John Wycliffe's Bible. Okay, acha, why this is very important? This is very important in Anglo-Norman period because aguru kona hutila the Roman Church or Roman Catholic Church re kona hutila Pope jaha kohibe. Okay, the head of the church jaha kohibe seta ko lokon ko follow kariya ko podutila, be it good or bad, seta bhal ho ba oba kharab ho, loko mane tanku mane follow kariya pai badhya thile. Okay, because what had happened, people couldn't read Bible at the time. People couldn't read the Bible at the time because it was in Latin language, and the people of the land didn't know Latin very well. Okay, so John Wycliffe translated the Bible, the Latin Bible, into English, the medieval English or Middle English. Okay, after that, the people, they got to be able to read the Bible thereafter. And what happened? These also these John Wycliffe's translation of the Bible, it paved the way for the Lollard movements. Okay, jodi the people, they started reading the Bible on their own, and they started rectifying the mistakes there in the Bible. Okay, so many other things are there also, like in 1476, all of us might be knowing, William Caxton, an English merchant. He was an English merchant. Okay, who brought printing press to England. Who introduced printing press in England. Jyoti paiki Renaissance period ta ro influence ta besi hela ebong the people, they started reading the pressed or published books and all, and Jyoti paiki this period, the 1476 onwards, okay, age of Chaucer onwards, or the Elizabethan era also, that paved the way for the English literature, and people started liking reading books and all. Okay, so ete je sobu jinso discuss kala pore I can say that so many other things are there that we all must know, which we will discuss after you have joined for the paid session. Okay, for that you can contact BIREN'S Academy, and we'll discuss everything in detail, and we'll make sure that you crack the examination and get success in life, like our students in the last session who had joined and have already got placement for Ssb Pgt English. Okay, so if you like the video, please do like, subscribe, and comment in the comment section. Also, think of joining BIREN'S Academy in order to make a career. Thank you.